Hello, I'm Delusion Dispeller, and I'm back to share more about borderline personality disorder. I will put a warning on the video, but I will also say it now. This may trigger somebody with BPD or somebody that's been traumatized, so please watch at your own risk. Use caution, maybe have a safe person with you while you're watching it because it can trigger. All right, that being said, let's get back to self-harming, one of the things that a borderline does for different reasons. So another reason they might self-harm is to kind of snap them back into reality. When you're feeling pain, that's a real feeling. You can't deny pain. So you're like, oh, wow, I'm alive. I feel this. I'm alive. Or they may use it to change their focus from the physical to physical pain from the emotional pain they're feeling. So they may have just broken up with their boyfriend. Cutting, beating themselves, burning themselves creates a physical effect, which gets their mind off of the emotional sadness, and they don't know how to cope with sadness and rejection and loss. And it can be a cry for help. Sometimes people will say, well, they're just trying to get attention. And it's true. Sometimes they are trying to get attention. And you need to pay attention to when they do that. Outward showing of how bad they feel inside. It's like, hey, this is me. This is what's happening on the inside of me. All these scars on my arms, these are scars on my heart. A lot of times when you go online and you go to borderline videos, you'll see pictures of girls, guys, whoever, with scars all over them because they've cut themselves or they've burned themselves or they've done something self-harming. And you'll see a little caption that says, this only matches what's on the inside, or this only pales in comparison to what I'm feeling inside. And it's very true because a borderline feels things very intensely. Marsha Linehan, who wrote the DBT manuals and first taught about DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, for borderlines, has said that borderline people basically are like burn victims that have burns on the outside. And when you touch them, it hurts them really deeply. They feel things so intensely. So this is a way to kind of flip off that switch or flip it on, depending on which they want to do. It's also, like I said, a cry for help. It's also that outward show. Okay. Sometimes the borderline will cut themselves or hurt themselves to avoid hurting other people. They have a lot of rage inside. So a lot of times they want to hurt somebody really bad to the point of maybe fatality. And they'll hurt themselves rather than hurting somebody else, which I didn't know. I just actually learned that from reading this book. Sometimes it's a way of re-afflicting the damage that was done to them by somebody else. Maybe they were harmed in a physical or intimate way by somebody. So by cutting, by hurting themselves, they're reenacting that. They feel unworthy. They feel like maybe they deserve to be abused. So they abuse themselves. They re-hurt themselves. And a lot of times they'll do it to kind of end up back in the familiar. They're used to being harmed, so they harm themselves. It's something familiar to them. Some borderline people feel pain and some don't. Some borderline people hide the scars and others show them off. Some sew up their own wounds. They'll actually take a needle and thread and sew up the cuts they've made on themselves. Some of them get medical help and some of them don't. Some borderlines who self-harm reach out to people and other people keep it a secret. The fact is, people that actually, hang on just a second. People that self-harm tend to seek help less often than those that don't, I think is the way they put it. A lot of them are very secretive about it. They don't want you to know about it. So they don't tend to reach out to the medical community because they don't want people to know. They're ashamed. They're embarrassed. They're humiliated. They don't want to have to try to come up with an explanation. A lot of them will make up excuses if somebody does see evidence of this. Oh, well, I caught myself on I don't know, a can I was opening, or I fell and scraped myself, or, I mean, they'll make up any different things. And some of them will actually admit, yeah, I cut. I do it because it feels good, or I do it because it helps me escape. It helps me zone out, dissociate, not feel the deep pain that I feel. It's the only way I know to cope with it. It becomes very addictive sometimes. So, number 6, another trait of borderline personality disorder, affective instability due to a marked reactivity of mood, intense episodic dysphoria, irritability, anxiety that lasts a few hours but not more than a few days. In layman's terms, what this means is swings in moods from intense anger to depression, depression to irritability, and then going from being irritable to anxious within a few hours. They are very hard to live with at times. You might feel like, oh my gosh, I said the wrong thing, they're going to snap. I used the wrong tone, they're going to lose it. I might have looked at them a wrong way, and the borderline is going to flip out all over me and spaz out and just freak out all over the place. It's like walking on eggshells, which triggers the borderline person to react. And it's very difficult, like I said, to live with them because you never know when they're going to explode. Number 7, a borderline will have chronic feelings of emptiness, which we already talked about. They feel non-existent. They hate being alone because they don't feel like they're really there. They reflect off of other people's reactions to them to feel like they have a soul and exist. Number 8, inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. They have temper tantrums frequently. They will actually get in physical fights sometimes with people. Some borderlines will feel unable to express anger. Some can express anger very readily. Some fear that they will go overboard if they actually allow themselves to embrace that anger. And some fear that the object of the anger that they're feeling will actually fight back and retaliate against them. What is borderline rage? Let's talk about that. It's sudden, it's non-expected or unexpected, nonsensical, it makes no sense, and it's unpredictable. It's unable to be explained away, and it's unable to be reasoned with. And the person is unable to be reasoned with as well. Borderlines will often lash out in anger because anger is easier to feel than being afraid. They are afraid of loss, they're afraid of abandonment, and they're afraid of rejection. A borderline struggles to feel empathy for others, and they want to hurt other people because they feel so deeply hurt by people in their life. Or if they perceive that they've been hurt, it may not be that you even meant to hurt them, but they perceive it that way. For some reason, the brain just goes there. And then they have a hard time realizing they've hurt you by lashing out because in their mind, you've hurt them first. Number 9, transient stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. A borderline will often check out when things get too tense. So they might recall situations that happened with you in a very different way than you remember them. Or they might not remember them at all. This is a really odd phenomenon. I went through this with the past mentor in my life, who I believe had symptoms of borderline and narcissism, where we would talk about like things that we experienced on a picnic or whatever, and I would talk about them in the way that I remembered them, and I'm sure that's how they happened. And she would say, no, that's not what happened at all. You're mistaken. That's not what happened. This is how it happened. And I knew that that was not how it happened. But in their minds, they have blacked out at that time. They've dissociated. They weren't really fully there. So they don't remember how it actually happened. And they will argue with you till the cows come home that they're right and you're wrong. And you totally did not understand anything that happened back then. So they check out when things are too tense. And then they don't remember what happened. Or they remember it the wrong way. They will do or say things while they're in a dissociated state that when you confront them later on, they don't remember it. They'll say, I never said that. What are you talking about? You're making that up. You're just trying to attack me. You're just trying to be mean to me. You're just crazy. You're just making that up and embellishing it and making it bigger than it was. It was nothing like that. That's the kind of stuff you'll hear from somebody with BPD. Borderline people think that boundaries, when you set a boundary, if you say, well, hey, I need to have you not call me so much after a certain hour because my kids are asleep. I'm setting a boundary with you. Well, you just don't want to be in the friendship anymore. You don't like me. You hate me. You never liked me. No, that's not true. I just want to have some space and time when my kids can take their naps and, or sleep at night. And you're kind of infringing on that by calling all the time or ringing my phone off the hook or whatever, or expecting me to spend time with you when I really need to be tending to my chores and my family. Well, you're putting your family before me. I was your best friend. I was there for you. Where was your family when you went through that loss of your friend? And, they'll just throw everything out there because they feel like you're just leaving them forever because you're setting a boundary and a guideline for them to follow. They hate boundaries. To them, it means aloneness. It means separateness. It's required that people have their own identity. But borderline people do not have this identity. Their identity comes from you, which means that they can't handle when you take that stimulus away from them. They don't know how to be alone with themselves. It terrifies them. They would rather be, on the other hand, totally isolated so they can self-punish themselves and be alone and miserable than be totally by themselves in a rejected way. Like they would rather make the decision, okay, I don't like people, I don't want anything to do with them, I'm just going to isolate myself and stay away from everybody. I'm going to reject them so they can't reject me. Or they want to be totally enmeshed with you. It's one or the other. It's extreme all or nothing thinking. I want to be every part of your life. I'm going to show up at your workplace and make myself known that we're besties so everybody knows that you and I are together forever. That's a borderline way of thinking. And they will do that, by the way. They will show up at your workplace. I'm going to make sure to introduce myself to all of your family members and tell them how good you've been to me and how we're just never, ever going to part. And yeah, that's borderline. Extreme attachment and enmeshment. I'm going to go on that vacation with you because I know you would want me there. You have to have me there. We do everything together. Enmeshment. BPD people have control issues. It puts people into a no-win situation with them. They accuse other people of trying to control them, or they may choose relationships and situations in which someone else makes all their decisions for them. So either they control or they give total control up to the other person. This happens in cults. It happens in relationships, marriages, military situations, all those kind of things where the borderline just says, okay, I'm not going to think for myself. You're going to run my life for me. Yes, I've been on that side of things where I was the one that looked for that significant other person to make all my decisions for me, which is why now, since I've healed from all those borderline things in the past, I don't let people decide for me. I'm totally the opposite way. It's not that I can't communicate with somebody and make decisions together, but because I was so needy and clingy years ago and drove so many people crazy or drove them right out of a relationship with me and ruined and sabotaged all my relationships, now there's a balance for me. You get to decide some things for me, but I also will stand my ground and say, I'm an independent person. I'm going to make that decision. It's very important to get to that point in your life where you can have that balance. All right. Why do borderlines control people? It helps them avoid feeling vulnerable. If they can be in charge, then you can't make a decision they don't like. You can't control them in a way that makes them feel trapped or uncomfortable. They're going to control you and everything around you so they don't have to feel helpless and vulnerable. They also won't have to feel shame, which is, oh my gosh, borderlines and shame, they don't mix. They can't stand feeling responsible for something. If they did it wrong, they don't want to have to apologize, but they will apologize. They don't like that feeling, though, of, oh, I did something bad, because it brings them back to bad girl, bad boy. You shouldn't have done that. That's why you should never, ever, ever say to your child, you're a bad boy. You're a bad girl. I actually met somebody the other day at the food pantry that called a little baby a jerk. Now, yes, he was playing, like, oh, you're such a jerk. Or she did something, I don't even remember what it was, but the mother walked away with the baby in her arms. And he said, is she being a jerk? Is she being a little jerk? Are you being a jerk today? I thought, oh my God, seriously, dude, you better shut up or I'm going to smack you. You don't say that to a child, ever. You don't call them names. You don't put them down, because this sets them up for this kind of mindset. I was put down as a child. That's how I know that. I was called names. I was mistreated. I was abused. It wasn't so much physical. It was a lot of psychological, because my stepdad was very, very mentally ill. So I endured that. I get it. I understand what effect that has on a kid. All right. One of the most important things that people don't realize about borderline personality disorder, and we see this in the movie Fatal Attraction. If you ever get a chance to watch that, if it doesn't trigger you, and you can watch it and kind of forward through the really gruesome parts, because there are some. Watch how the lady in that movie acts, how she behaves, how she reacts. She's borderline. This is how borderlines are. This is what they do. Okay, they lack object constancy. Let's talk about what that means. What that means is somebody with BPD cannot recall love or security with another person when that person is not with them physically. When that person, say they're dating somebody and the person has to go home, they're not living together. They're just dating in a pure way, just seeing each other, going out to dinner once in a while, going to movies, whatever. The person's like, I gotta go. No, babe, don't leave me. Please don't leave me. Honey, you don't get it. I can't live without you. I just can't. I can't exist. Do you have a picture? Can I have a picture of you? Let's take a picture together. So they'll have to get this picture, because this is a physical thing that they can hold in their hand and look at and remember what you looked like. Start recalling what you smelled like. Start remembering the relationship that they had with you, because as soon as you go home, you don't exist anymore. And they're scared of that, especially if they love you and they feel attached to you. They don't want to feel that total disconnect that a borderline has. So they get very clingy, very needy, and blow your phone up. They will call you and call you and call you when you are at home. They'll call you when you're on a trip. They'll call you if you're at school, at work, or wherever you are, because they have to reconnect, because they lose that ability to remember being in your arms, being kissed by you, sitting and watching a movie with you. They can't remember it. I understand, because that was me years ago. Still me to an extent now. It's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. This is like a delayed attachment disorder that children, I'm trying to think of what it's called, where a mom leaves the room and the baby starts screaming at a certain stage of child development. They lack that attachment ability to realize mom's coming back. Well, this is the same thing. And if anybody knows the name of that, please post that, because for some reason I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, it's a detachment thing. They don't know how to healthfully detach, but they call it object constancy. That object is no longer constant to them, to their mind, to their emotions. So they have to keep touching base to make sure the object is still there, and to keep bringing it back to life and re-experience it. So they need to call you to reconnect. They need constant reassurance that you love them, that you're not leaving them, that you're not rejecting them. And they'll say stuff like, well, I'm so scared that I just ruined everything. Are you upset with me? Are you going to leave me? Are you going to abandon me? Is this it? Are we done? Are we over? Are we through? And they'll ask you that all the time ad nauseum, to the point where you're like, no. We just had a misunderstanding. It's okay. I'm not leaving you forever. I promise. And it's exhausting, extremely exhausting when people do that. All right. But it's understandable. I told you they need photos. They also can ask for your perfume, your cologne. What cologne do you wear? They'll try to get a hold of a locket of your hair. They'll have you write them love letters just so they can hold on to it. They'll hang your picture up in their room. They have to constantly connect, because they cannot re-feel that again. And that will help them be less clingy if you can provide them with some piece of yourself while you're not there for them physically. Okay, this is the last part I'm going to do today. They have interpersonal sensitivity. What this means is a borderline person can read people to know their triggers or their vulnerabilities. They can even tell how a therapist is doing at each session, and they'll even mention it to them. They'll say, looks like you had a bad day today. Are you okay? And the therapist will be like, what? How do they know this? I haven't even been with them all day. How do they sense this? Borderlines are very keen on reading people. They know the signs. They know you sometimes better than you know yourself. And they'll often tell you that. And it's almost an uncomfortable invasion type feeling. It's not fun. I'm wondering if I'm going to stop there or go one more. Situational competence. Borderlines can often do well in certain situations, but not others. So you may see somebody with borderline personality disorder being fine on a job. In fact, they may be creative, innovative, they may be the top of their company, stuff like that, but yet be very uncomfortable in other situations. They may even be like a high achiever and intelligent, artistic, and they may get bragged about in their companies. But yet, in a dating relationship, they fall apart. They're very able to compartmentalize and be one way in one place and situation and a totally different way in another situation. Anyway, that's all I have for now. I will be bringing you more on this excerpting from Stop Walking on Eggshells. Once again, that's by Paul T. Mason, MS, and Randy Krieger. They used to have, I don't know if it's still there, I believe it was called Welcome to Oz or Return to Oz or something like that website for people with BPD and their loved ones. You might want to check it out. I'll see if it's legit still, if it's still up there. I'll try to post the link so you can go there and check it out. All right, thanks for watching, and I will bring more from this Stop Walking on Eggshells excerpt series soon. Again, if this triggers you, please watch it with a safe person. And if you need help, please get help from a safe person. God bless and have a wonderful day, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.